I would like to thank you for joining our webinar this afternoon, How to Hire Smarter in 2015. My name is David Whitaker, and I am with the Georgia Employers Association. We're fortunate to have Ira Wolfe, President of Success Performance Solutions, who will facilitate the webinar. Ira is a recognized thought leader and author about workforce trends and employee assessments. He writes and speaks about the convergence of increasing job skill requirements, changing demographics, accelerating changes in technology and globalization, which is creating unprecedented staffing changes. He is quoted this month in an Inc. magazine article on the increased business use of online assessments to help make hiring decisions. The article by Alex Stewart highlights the effectiveness of online testing for analysis of hard-to-measure qualities such as assertiveness and dependability. The Georgia Employers Association partners with Ira Success Performance Solutions. Before I turn it over to Ira, there's a couple of issues I'd like to mention to you. One, we have the lines muted, but you can type in questions and Ira will answer them at the end of the webinar. Also, we will also unmute the phone for a few minutes at the end of the webinar if you would like to verbalize your question instead of typing it. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you, David. Thanks for the kind introduction, and welcome everybody who is on board today. I appreciate the opportunity. Been a good relationship so far. We kind of launched it with Georgia Employers Association last summer. And we've had a few clients a few members take advantage of the services, and we're very pleased for that. So hopefully today we'll spur up a little bit more interest, and if nothing else, provide you a little bit more education on what's out there as far as pre-employment assessments. Today's topic was really how to hire smarter. I'm going to focus a little bit on one of the systems that we use, which has been quite popular in a number of industries, including manufacturing, distribution, call centers, and it's a very versatile system. But you know, in doing so, I want to be able to provide a little bit of background and education of how to evaluate assessment systems. We provide a number of different tools, but you know, sometimes companies or certain positions have different needs, again, the purpose of today is to be able to provide an overview of what's out there and the growing market for pre-employment testing, give you an overview of what's available, and we're going to use PeopleClues as one of those examples, which is a tool that we do offer. But there, you know, to be fair, I mean, there are other systems available too. At the end, if you have any questions, or during that, if you have any questions, please, you know, make sure you post it, and we'll make sure that they're answered. Now, without further ado, let's get started here. Okay. So one of the first things that comes up is when we talk about pre-employment testing is one of the most common questions is it legal? You know, are we allowed to use it? And there's certainly been a lot of press out there, media, especially if you follow HR, about some of the legality of it. I can assure you that pre-employment testing is legal. The criteria to make sure that it remains, that it's compliant, is certainly that you need to use a valid assessment, meaning that you need to select the right tool for the right skill or aptitude or attitude that you're testing. So it's got to be validated. It's got to be reliable, which means that it's consistent over time. But most cases that have been brought to light, or where vice versa, where companies get in trouble, is that it's not used consistently, or it's not used fairly. And we work with clients, you know, to ensure that that happens. You know, it's always up to the end user, though, of how they want to use it. But if an assessment is used, any type of assessment is used, and it's validated, reliable, and consistent and used fairly, then the EUC, the Department of Labor, you know, do endorse it. They don't endorse any specific tools, but they do endorse the use of assessments because it is an objective way to look at people that you hire. The slide that's up here now sometimes surprises people. is it talks about what's considered an assessment, and typically we're talking about personality or honesty and integrity or drug testing or a medical test. But even observation and resumes and the application is considered an assessment. And when it really comes down to it is how valid and reliable is your observation. If you were contested on or challenged by a candidate or an applicant who did or did not get the job, how would you defend someone's observations that they weren't biased? We all have our personal biases, whether it's someone who's too tall, too small, too thin, too big, too large, too fat, too skinny. What about tattoos? What about colored hair? What about piercings? We all have our personal biases, and therefore sometimes our observations are not as valid as they should be, and they're not as reliable, and those do get challenged. So testing isn't the only tools that we use in our hiring bag, toolbox, that need to be, need to meet the highest standards of validity, reliability, predictability, and fairness. But certainly anything that we're talking about today, any of the systems that we use do have high levels of validity, reliability. We have very strong technical manuals to support all the assessments if it comes down to that. But frankly, most very few tests have actually been challenged in the courts. There's a lot more written about it and attempts to challenge them than actually success in ruling against a company who has used them. And in fact, a lot of the cases do support the employer when they're challenged, because if they're used, again, consistently and fairly, and I'll keep repeating that, used consistently and fairly and not to discriminate, then the courts generally side on the side of the employer, because it is a form of objective assessment rather than the subjectivity of observation in the interview. The interviews are, if it's done well, they're a good behavioral structural interview. Success rates for behavioral assessment or behavioral interviews are in the 70% success rate. Certainly there's a lot of candidates who are very good at deceiving you, and some managers aren't as good as interviewing, so there's a variance there. Unfortunately, not everybody is highly skilled at behavioral interviewing. Not everybody's a CSI agent. So a lot of the interviews are very weak in the types of questions that are asked, and the managers or the hiring managers or recruiters' perception of the other person. And then in today's market, a lot of the applicants and candidates are highly skilled at interviewing. They may not be skilled at actually doing the work that they're interviewing for, but they are highly skilled at interviewing. So so the assessments, such as personality, interest, and honesty, integrity, and values assessment, motivation tests, and general ability assessments are good objective third-party tools to bring some balance to the process. We don't suggest using any tool as a standalone. We're not suggesting using this to replace an interview. We suggest using tools to enhance the interview. And as you'll see, each of our assessments actually provides an interview guide with recommended interview questions. So, and this list, by the way, came from the Testing and Assessment Employer's Good Guide to Good Practices. I can, if anybody's interested, I can send that direct, or you can just do a search on Google for that, and it'll come up. Employee assessment is not black or white either. The best results don't come from just using the assessment, but a combination. And as I just mentioned, I'm using the broad sense of assessments, where an assessment could be a personality assessment, and then you still do the interview. You still obviously have an application. You do reference checks. All those are considered forms of assessment, and the combination of the information that you get from there creates some data points, and that allows you to make better decisions. And the results shouldn't be taken at face value. the system that we're going to focus on today, PeopleClues, does offer a percentage score at the end, but there's no magic bullet to that. There are ranges. You need to look at the data. Sometimes an 80% could be better than a 90%, just on where the traits fall and what your requirements are for both your company culture and for the job specific. So we're entering a world of big data. People like to make hiring very easy and straightforward, and unfortunately, in today's age, it's just not as simple as it was before, because there's very few low-skill manual jobs. Even the low-skill manual jobs are much higher skilled than they used to be. So what are some assessment systems? These are examples of systems that we provide. PeopleClues is primarily our pre-employment screening tool. It's designed for the non-exempt. Employee Assess is for key people, but especially for sales management and leadership. Previews kind of falls in between the PeopleClues and the Assess. We do use Preview for cognitive ability aspect of that. We are experts and certified in DISC. We have a tool that looks at business motivators and values. It's an excellent tool at finding out what motivates an individual, what do they value, and how will they fit into your company culture. eSkill is a system that we use for basic, any type of basics, a hard skill, a technical skill. So we can test for their English or math proficiency, data entry, typing, software, programming. There's about 700 different tests in there, but those are basically hard skill. Creatrix is a test for innovation skill. Quality of motivation is really one of the best self-development, motivational tools that I know. It's fairly complex. I'm one of the few certified people in the country that can use it. Happy to share more information if anybody's interested in that. And then we do offer a few 360s as well. So when you're looking at testing employees, there's essentially two strategies, and sometimes it comes down to as simple as budget and price. Most lower cost tools, most simpler tools, most tools that take 5 to 10 to 15 minutes to complete are really screening tools. They are highly validated, they're very reliable, but what they are best at doing is weeding out the high-risk candidates. If you have 100 people or 10 people or 5 people and you're trying to narrow down that people to a lower amount, and you're trying to just identify pretty quickly who are the people that just don't fit or bring a high-risk behavior. And PeopleClues fits in that realm, and there's many other tools that do that as well. But if you took all the testing that's out there for pre-employment and you put them into two piles, I like to describe it that way. One is a screening tool, one selection. Screening tools are very, very good at identifying people who you shouldn't waste any more time in, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that if they go through that filter, that they're going to be the perfect employee. When you do have specific criteria, you've identified competencies, it's a key position, there's very low tolerance for a mistake, then you're better off looking at some higher level tools. For instance, in our portfolio, we use Preview and Assess. Another analogy to this is screening tools is really putting somebody under a magnifying glass. Selection tools are putting somebody under, under an MRI or a CAT scan, much more in-depth information. So think about that as you go to a doctor. Sometimes you can, they can do a blood test, and sometimes they have to do extensive testing. How much information do you possibly need? How critical is it that you don't make a mistake? But typically, the lower cost, faster tools or screening tools, the ones that take anywhere from 30 minutes to maybe an hour, and they have more questions involved. They tend to have a higher level of reliability. They're much more predictive, but they definitely give you more insight into that. So this PeopleClues system, again, the Internet's been wonderful because it's allowed small companies, it's really allowed anyone to have access to very sophisticated technologies and testing. The challenge is the Internet, as we all know, allows people to basically put up anything without the scrutiny that it deserves. This is my business. I focus on this. I try to really make sure that anything that we use meets the highest standards, is best practice. And PeopleClues was developed by Dr. Goodstein and Dr. Lanyon and has been consistently validated. It was just revalidated over the last year as well. Dr. Leonard Goodstein was a former president of the American Psychological Association, and he's a psychometrician, which focuses on the development of testing. And Dr. Lanyon I don't think he still is, but he was chairman and a professor at the Arizona State University and wrote basically one of the Bibles on psychometrics. It's been around for about 20 years, and it also has job templates and profiles for over 125 different jobs. So we'll get into that in just a little bit. So what drives fit when you're looking at an assessment? One is most people look at, do they have the skill, and that's often going to come from the resume and past experience. The job fit is how will they perform the job? Will they perform it in a way that is compatible with your customer base, with your products, with your services, and with your company culture? And then there is a culture fit, and there's certainly attitudes and engagement that need to be considered. And PeopleClues basically provides 4 different tools. 2 of them, the attitude and engagement, looks at the company fit, personality and cognitive, and the attitude really looks at the job fit. So in doing a screening, this process goes down as you have all these applicants, and one of the questions we get is, when's the best time to use a pre-employment assessment? And typically we suggest that you do an initial screen, whether it's a phone screen, some type of an interview, or certainly a review of the resume. We do offer some licenses, unlimited use licenses, and some companies have the applicant complete the assessment at the same time as they do the application, but that's entirely up to you. The only thing, again, is that you need to be consistent when you do test people. So assuming that you did that initial phone screen, interview, review, you might even have done some face-to-face interviewing. At that point, you may identify that you wanted to go further with them, get some more detailed information, and that's where they typically fit. Most clients, even if they start late in the game, meaning that they narrow it down to the final candidate or two and do the testing, most companies seem to be moving earlier in the process because they realize had they had additional information earlier that the interviews would have been more robust, and they might have saved some time of screening somebody out earlier, or sometimes the employees the candidates screen themselves out earlier. So typically they're done either after the initial resume review or after the first interview. The PeopleClues assessment system has 4 different tools. This is a differentiator as you look out there in the market among different systems. Again, this is primarily for the not necessarily entry level, but the hourly or non-exempt employees. There's an attitude questionnaire, and that looks at honesty and integrity. We'll go into more detail. Personality looks at 6 different personality traits. General reasoning is a 7-minute timed assessment. It looks at how quickly people learn. It's not how smart someone is, because it's geared down to a high school reading and math level, but it's how quickly people can respond and learn new things. Some of the terms we use is, can they think on their feet? Can they learn on the fly? It's very helpful in a fast-changing job. It's also helpful in companies that don't have an extensive onboarding process, and you're looking for people, even if they don't have the skills, that can learn them pretty quickly and get up and running. So general reasoning is becoming a much more important part of the pre-employment screening process. And then there is a short survey. It's less than 5 minutes, and it looks at how engaged the individual was at their prior job and their prior company. Sometimes there was a mismatch in the company, and sometimes they're just not happy people, and it will give you a sense of where the engagement is. But the core tools that are used most often are the top 3: attitude, personality, and general reasoning. You have the option in the PeopleClues system to use 1, 2, 3, or 4 of them, all for, it's all done at the same fee. So under attitudes, what do we assess? Well, one is we look at hostility. It's also called frustration tolerance. Do they have the attitude to work with customers and coworkers? Are they patient? Are they tolerant? Or do they have a short fuse? Conscientiousness is dependability. This is highly predictive of people who, for absenteeism. If you're having a problem with absenteeism, then the attitude survey is a great tool to use to identify people who really don't have a positive and a strong attitude toward showing up on time and following through. Integrity, it's pretty transparent, it's honesty. Those are the 3 core scales. If you just use these 3, it's about a 25-question survey, and it takes 5 to 6 minutes to complete. You have the option to add computer abuse, which is do they feel it's okay to use devices and business computers for personal use? They're going to run their eBay business or be communicating all day long on Facebook. And then sexual harassment is what's their attitude toward telling dirty jokes and being more discreet on the job. Good impression scale is a distortion scale. It's on every one of our hiring tools. One of the most common questions that I receive when people are evaluating the system is, can't candidates fake this out? And sure they can. That's why they call it a good impression. If the good impression score is too high, then it means that the results may be unreliable, that the results just seem unrealistic, too good to be true. Other names for that could be social desirability, positive factors. The PeopleClues systems happen to call it good impression. But there is a very sophisticated algorithm that will give you an indication whether the results are too good to be true. Under personality, it measures 6 scales. Personality traits, what the team orientation is. Are they team-oriented or more individualistic? Are they conscientious? Do they happen to be dependable? Are they more impulsive? Detail orientation doesn't need much explanation. By the way, under conscientiousness, this is, does someone have a good attitude towards showing up, and this is, do they have the behavior to show up on time? Or do they have a good attitude about following the rules, but they, do they also have a trait, an inclination that they tend to follow the rules? So you can have one or both. If you have high conscientiousness but a bad attitude, then that's probably not such a good combination. If you have a high conscientiousness on attitude, but a lower conscientiousness on personality, sometimes the attitude will compensate for that. Extroversion, do they tend to be more outgoing or into themselves? Emotional stability, this is one of the most predictive scales of how do they deal with stress and what are their coping skills like. Are they highly resilient or are they highly emotional? Tough-mindedness, do they tend to be more direct or agreeable? Those are the 6 scales, and you get a lot of information out of that. I mentioned earlier that this is a screening tool. This is all based on what we call the 5-factor personality model. They subdivided one of the 5 factors and made it into, we have 6 actually factors in PeopleClues. In the assess system, which is the one that we recommend for key positions, leadership management, sales, there's actually 24 different traits, and it's subdivided much more extensively. But again, so it's still based on a very sound psychometric model. I mentioned earlier about the general reasoning, that's that cognitive ability, and then it also has the good impression. The attitudes are both the personality and the attitude segments are normed, meaning they compare it to a general population. Very high reliability. The attitudes, you will get a low, some, or serious concern. Mentioned that you can have 3 core scales, the distortion and the distortion scale. And this, the behavioral guide is really one of the most popular features of the assessment. Sometimes hiring managers or the HR department doesn't even allow the hiring manager to see what the scores are. They just provide them the interview guide, and it keeps them on track. And each interview guide is not boilerplated. It's based on how the candidate responded to the question. So if they responded favorably to some questions, you won't get an interview question for that. If they respond unfavorably and they seem to be a higher risk, you'll get different questions for hostility, for conscientiousness, for integrity, and if you add the computer abuse and sexual harassment, you'll get specific questions you should ask, you should provide for that. This is what the scoring looks like for the attitude. Basically, I don't have the optional scales down here, but it's pretty clear. It's pretty transparent. If they fall in the green, it's they have a low concern. You still might get an interview question or two, but it's probably only one. If they fall in they're yellow, it's some concern, a little higher risk, and then if they fall in the red, there's a serious concern, which means that they responded unfavorably to 3 or more questions. And it's as simple as reading, reading this grid. The PeopleClues system has a very low, really it's little experience is needed in reading these. We're always there. We do some initial training with you. We're always no further than an email or a phone call away. But most of these are written for the end user, not for the psychologist or for some. All our systems can be used pretty much off the shelf with a minimum of experience. And again, they're very transparent and the information is readily available. Under the PeopleClues, again, it's highly normed, reliable, mentioned 125 jobs, most of this we repeated. And again, it does have that interview guide. And this is what one of the reports looks like. I'm going to take you, this is what the report looks like, and we'll dig into this just a little bit more in a second here. Under general reasoning, everything's placed on a bell-shaped curve, and it compares an individual to the general population. In this case, they're right about 50 percentile, so their general reasoning skills are 50% better than most people, than half the population, and 50%, they're 50% of the population probably has quicker skills. Most jobs require them to be in the middle. If they're on the low side, it doesn't mean that they're disqualified. It just means that it's going to take them a little longer to learn new things and adapt. If they're on the high side, which is where everybody's preference would be, because people are smart, they can learn on their feet, they're very quick. The challenge is if the job is more tedious, more routine, and you hire somebody with these high general reasoning skills, the problem is that they get bored on the job. So one cause of turnover happens to be hiring people with too high of abilities for the job that they're going to do. Each report gives you 3 or 4 bullets of what this means, and then there's one interview question that's printed out within the report itself, and then there's the guide, which will provide you 3 additional questions. So this is just a short snapshot of the of part of the report. It's a 2-page report, and then it shows you what the conscientiousness and tough-minded, and I'll go in a little bit more detail on the next page with that. And then it provides a score, an overall score. We work with you to determine what the best fit is, but essentially 75% or above is a good range to start. That tends to be people who have a reasonably good chance of fitting in the job. 60 to 74% is a little higher risk. There may be some good traits, but there's some risky behavior in there. And then it's almost assuredly about between 8 and 9 80 and 90% failure rate of people who are below 59%. Occasionally, you do have somebody who steps up to the plate, but the risk of hiring somebody that falls below 60% is very high, that they're not going to work out real well. So here's a bigger picture of this, how this works. Each of the personality traits compares the individual to the general population. In this case, 90% of the population would be more collaborative and win-win than this individual. We also compare it to the role in the job, because there are some jobs where being highly competitive would be desirable, and in other jobs where it's unfavorable. So in this particular example, in addition to being compared to the normal population, or the general population, not a normal population, but a general population, it says that it falls in the red area, and it would be a poor fit. So this might be for a customer service position, whereas maybe in a sales position, especially in a pretty aggressive sales culture, this might be in the green. So in this case, we have 125 different benchmarks, 125 different patterns that exist here. And again, you're getting norming against the general population, also norming against a specific job population. Again, just a different view of what we displayed before. This happens to be for customer service. Some scales, you'll notice, don't have a red, and that's because there were no really high risks. That there were some customer service people who were successful at being impulsive. There were some concerns with being impulsive, but they weren't the highest risk. And then there were some also being too detail-oriented, almost on a perfectionist aspect. So for customer service, it tends to be the middle spot's the sweet spot, and then yet on other in other scales, there are some red zones. It will identify how many red zones. The new report shows it right at the top, and if you have 2 or more, it's a pretty high risk. Sometimes you can even have a 90% with 1 red. And then what you do is you look to see where that red would be. Okay, so here's 2 quick examples of how this might work. Example with Gina and Sally. You notice there's no norming. This is just compared to the general population. In tough-mindedness, Gina is more direct and determined. Sally's more cooperative and agreeable. When it comes to the team aspect, Gina not only is direct, but she's more competitive. Sally is more agreeable and collaborative. That doesn't mean that they're qualified or disqualified for the job. It's just comparing it to the normal population. If we go to the next one here, it shows that for this particular role in customer service, Gina's in the yellow, a little too direct in there, and much too competitive compared to other people who have been successful in customer service. For Sally, this normally shows up as green. It's showing up for some reason as tan in the slide. But she's definitely in the sweet spot for that and the sweet spot over here. And then you would get the different ratings there. You can also compare them to different positions. One advantage of the PeopleClues system is the candidate completes 1 questionnaire, and then you have the opportunity to lay them against 125 different jobs. So maybe they came in as an administrative assistant, but there's an opening in customer service, and you're wondering whether you want to move them into that role. Maybe they came in as a mechanic, but there's another position open in engineering, and you wanted to know what their fit might be. We also have a supervisor management assessment as well. So if you do have some people within the system, you can compare them and find out what their potential might be in a supervisory management role. And then, as I also suggested, that you have for both the attitude and the personality, you will get interview questions that come out. So in an example like this, where this would be a high risk, it might be, tell me about a time when you felt like you had gone above and beyond your job requirements and did not get recognized for it. And that certainly would be kind of delving into how much recognition, how needy they could be, or how greedy they could be in a circumstance like that. Let me stop there before I go into the other ones are really features that are added to the system, not necessarily specific to the assessment. So let me stop there and see if there's any questions.
The only question we've gotten so far is, can I get a copy of the slides? And yes, you can.
Yeah, David already has those available, so no problem. And if anybody, I'll make this offer, if anybody's interested in evaluating it, we're happy to provide some complimentary assessments to test a current employee, or anybody's on the call who wants to test it to see what the experience is like and how it might fit. Happy to provide that to anybody. If we have no other questions, we'll keep going here for a second. How does the system work? And again, this is important because some systems have great tools, but they're pretty clumsy. We can automate a lot. We have what we call an events module, and this is where you can invite candidates to complete an assessment either by sending them an email. We also can create a link, and you can send the link out. You can actually put the link on the website, on your website. You can put it in an email that you send out to all your candidates. We don't suggest doing that unless you're under a subscription, unlimited use subscription, because if you put it on the web, then everybody decides to take it, you're going to get charged every time that's completed. If you're under a subscription, you pay a flat fee for the year, and that's becoming a much more popular way to approach it. But you can either send the individual an email. You can create a template with an email that you send out to your Outlook or your own email system, or you can create a link. Well, the system automatically creates a link. So if you have a customer service position and you want to test them on attitude and personality and general reasoning, you create a link and it will automatically send those specific tests to the candidate, and when it's completed, it will automatically run it for customer service. If you're also at the same time looking for somebody in sales, and maybe you don't want the attitude, you just want the general reasoning and the personality, you create a second link. So you can create links per job, per department, for division, however you want to do it. There's no additional cost. That's just part of the system to do that. So in doing so, you can organize participants by job title or role, or as I said, by division or company or department, and then assign different users to that. So there'd be one administrator for the whole system, but then different jobs could have the reports automatically delivered to different managers. So who's overseeing your customer service, you may want them only to see customer service. You don't want to see everybody in the rest of the company. You can also sort and rank the job participants' job fit scores very easily. You just click the top. I'm happy to do a demo for anybody too, but you just click the top, and it'll sort them from high to low or low to high. Okay. There is a jobs, what we call a jobs module as well. This is probably the most basic applicant tracking system. It's not even a tracking system, an applicant processing system you can have. It allows you to post a job on the board. So you create a link over to it. You can include your job description and responsibility just like you can anywhere else. You can create some very basic pre-screening questions. Are you available to work evenings? Do you have a valid driver's license? Have you ever been convicted of a crime? Some things you might ask on the application. Do you have more than 5 years experience? But all the questions are yes and no. It will tell you if they were disqualified, if they answered any question incorrectly. But it does allow you to ask some pre-screening questions. They can upload a resume if they have. But then the advantage is that they would automatically be taken to the questionnaires, and once you log in, you would see their resume, their answers to their pre-screening questions, and their assessment results. So you can sort it that way. For those of you who don't have an ATS, an applicant tracking system, or have any type of automation, it's a very easy way to get started. But we do have other systems that are a little bit more sophisticated if anybody wanted to explore that. But this is included for free in the system. So again, anybody that's looking to hire and wants to post something and they don't want to get everything through their email, then this is again, this is included in the PeopleClues system. And yeah, I reviewed this already, what's included in the job posting. So just another feature that's included there. And that really takes care of you know, the system that we had. I just want to go back and do a quick review here. You know, the PeopleClues system is, you know, comprised of an attitude and personality survey, general reasoning, high validation, high validity. Also has an employee engagement survey, which I didn't show you here. Again, it's about a 5-minute questionnaire, and you get the report looks very much like the attitudes. You get two scores. You get, were they engaged in the prior company, and were they engaged with the prior job that they held? And that's an optional assessment that's available. So with that, I'm going to go back to David and ask if there's any additional questions that have come up.
Would you show the slide with your information on it, please?
Oh, sure. Oops. Oh, too zealous.
I think it was the last one.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me go to the last one. There we go.
Yeah. And I guess if anybody wanted more information, they could give you a call or send you an email.
Oh, absolutely. Call, email, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. You can get me in many different ways, but the numbers are posted there. Yeah. If you call a 484 number, it's direct, and the email will go direct to me. But in any way that you can get me, I'm available. Happy to answer any questions. It seems, again, anybody that would like to trial it, would like a demo, happy to do that. If this didn't seem to fit your immediate need, but you were interested in other skill testing, we're offering all of them through through our partnership with GEA, and happy to provide you other information.
Yeah, thank you, Ira. Does anybody have any questions now? At this point, I'll be glad to unmute your line. If you just raise your hand and let me know. Virtually raise your hand, of course. I don't see anybody. I don't see any hands raised. We answered the one question about, can I get a copy of the slides? Yes, I will send copies of the slides. And also, this webinar will be posted on our website as well. Let's see. Lisa, did you have a question? I just unmuted your line.
No, I got it. I'm sorry, I found it.
Okay, good. Okay. Does anyone else have a question? Okay, well, I really appreciate you staying with us through the entire webinar. This has been a great, Ira did a great job as usual. And you have his contact information if you want to give me a call. My number is 478-722-8282. That's 478-722-8282. Once again, my name is David Whitaker, and my email address is david at, spell the word Georgia, Georgia, employers, employers.org, David at georgiaemployers.org. We'll be glad to provide you all more information. Thank you so much for attending. Ira, did you have any more words of wisdom for us?
No, likewise. I appreciate everyone taking the time and sticking with it today. I know it's sometimes like drinking out of a fire hydrant, but if anybody does have any other questions, don't hesitate to contact me. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and we'll contact us if we can help you. Y'all have a great afternoon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.